Hi, I'm Celine and welcome to my channel. Today I want to talk about a topic that's very dear to my heart, and it's the topic of creativity. I want to talk about two questions. What's a common myth about creativity that I believed for a lot of my life and sort of held me back? And also, what are ways that we can really tune in and align with that state of creative flow in our lives? So they're the two questions I'd like to talk about. And I want to talk about them in terms of my own perspective and what I have learned, and hopefully that will help you in terms of your thinking maybe, and learning some new tools about accessing that creative part of yourself. Well, we are creative beings. So just to tell you a little bit about my history, in terms of a myth about creativity, I grew up believing that there were creative people in the world and there were people who were not creative, and I was in the latter group. I never was told anything different. I don't know that anyone ever told me that, but that was what I believed for pretty much all of my life. I saw people around me who pursued careers in the arts, and that seemed to be one group of people, and if you weren't doing that, you weren't creative. And I sort of seemed to slot into more mathematical or business type subjects, which really now I wouldn't have a huge interest in, but I'm sure they've stood to me in a lot of ways. So that was a myth, I believe, that a lot of us grew up believing, and it really can hold us back. And it's interesting, it was only a couple of years before I was diagnosed with cancer, which was in 2016. And I was thinking about this the other day. It was quite interesting. Couple of years before, I've worked in marketing, I suppose, for a lot of my life, first in a bank and then in an education institute in a university for about 10 years. So I was in a marketing sales role, and we changed office about 2 years prior to getting sick. And in that office there was, some new people joined us, and there was one particular person who I have to say is I'm sure still, very talented artist. And they were also in a marketing role, and we were all in marketing roles. And that was all fine. But I found myself beginning to feel really resentful. And it used to happen. It was sort of interesting. And now I can see there was nothing personal in this other than I was getting a wake-up call. And I sort of knew it subconsciously, but I didn't know what to do about it. But anytime we might be discussing ideas or ads or different things, which I had always enjoyed, and design, it was always deferred to this person as, they're the creative person. And I remember saying it to someone one day, but God, are the rest of us just pure robots that we've nothing to contribute? And really, that was just, I can see now how all of that conspired, I suppose, to give me that message. You're not expressing yourself in your life. And I never had. I grew up with, really now I can see, without any creative outlet. The only thing I think I did creatively was in my teens, and as a student I loved knitting. I remember loving crafts and knitting and needlework, and I've gone back to that actually. But I love the colour and playing around with the wools and patterns and experimenting. So that would have been my only outlet. So it was just very interesting that as I was reaching burnout and getting sick, basically getting cancer, this message kept being hammered home. Very interesting. And then what happened actually was I did get cancer, and I went through all of that. And as I was recovering, thankfully in a way now, I had horrendous fatigue afterwards, and I actually tried to go back to work. It was insanity now when I think of it, but I was really trying to push myself and judging myself, and I was only over treatment a couple of months, and I wasn't able. So really, that again was the universe, life conspiring to go, no, this path ain't for you. It's done. It's over. It was great while it lasted, but you're onto something new now. And what happened during that time when I was a bit lost, was very lost actually, really didn't know what to do next. I was in transition, felt just very fragile and vulnerable really around this whole topic. But a friend, and it's interesting, it was a person I don't think I had seen in years, reappeared in my life and actually started talking to me about a course that a friend was running based on, if you've heard of the book Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way. And when I heard about it, I was, oh, I'm not an artist, so that's not for me. And she started explaining a bit more, and she had done it, and she was doing it as a lovely workshop in her home, and it was very warm and welcoming, and all different types, mainly women, doing it, small group or 6 or 7. And I did go and do it, and it was absolutely life-changing. It was the next step that I needed. I didn't know what the next step was, but it just showed me, we're always shown it. And she calls the course The Creative Way, but it's based on the principle of Julia Cameron's book. So to anyone who's interested in exploring that whole topic, I'd recommend it as a book to read. You can work through it yourself, some great tools, exercises, and I still refer to it, and I still, I suppose, and at this stage it's sort of built into my routine, but I would practice a lot of those tools and exercises. So that was really the next step for me, and interestingly, out of it I ended up writing a book, and then I went on to write a second book, which is to be published early in the new year. So that just shows I had written at work, but never in a million years would I have thought of writing. But it was because of that course, and because of the support and the nurturing and the safety and everything around the group. Really fantastic. So that was powerful, and it's interesting now. I think once we start dipping into that well of creativity in all of us, there's no limit really. I would have said, oh yeah, I'm writing, but I can't do anything else. And then I was encouraged to sort of try and explore a bit more. So I went off and I just have this whole interest in colour and use of colour in my life, and the chakras and just their meaning. So I went off and bought some canvas, and I've been playing around since then, and I love it. I've come back to knitting. Sometimes I sit down. I'm not a great piano player, but I sometimes mess around as well. So it's letting the child out. So for me, that was a big myth. What would I say? What's the word? Well, basically, it's not true, is what I can say, because everyone's creative. Creativity is really, it's natural to create. It's in our lifeblood. There's a flow of creative energy, running through all of us. And it's only when we shut that down, and we get disconnected. But when we're connected to our source, there's creative energy flowing through us. I can vouch for that 100%. So that's that myth dispelled, I will say. In terms of the second question, there's so many, I suppose, as I said, there's that book, The Artist's Way, which I'd highly recommend. Just from my own experience, I want to share a couple of things that I have learned and some tips that helped me if I was ever having any blocks or, finding it difficult and going, why, when I was, really creative and in flow the other day, there's nothing. And there's stages, there's different stages we go through. But the first thing I would say for me is the whole area of resistance and letting go of resistance. And that's really a life lesson, I suppose, I'm still learning. There's a book I love called The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. I'll do a video on some great books that have helped me soon, but this is one I revisit a lot. And he talks about letting go of resistance. And really, that's how we block ourselves from the flow of life, that flow of creative energy. And what happens, and I've done it, is he describes it so well, but it's just like life unfolds and events unfold, and they're impersonal. They're just events. We have no control over them, but for various reasons, we attribute certain meanings to certain events. So we don't like them, and emotionally they sort of trigger us, or we maybe bring back some old memory. So we resist it, and we close down, and we shut down our heart. We basically shut down our access to creative energy. So really, and the breathwork practice, I talked about it in another video, anything that allows, he talks about as well the backlog, and, if we've held all of this stuff and it's got stuck, when something happens, we're not let's say, responding to it in the moment. We're responding based on some past conditioning and beliefs and experiences. So that's something I try to work on all the time, is resistance. And I think currently, I'm really feeling challenged by it these days. I always know when I get a block is when I usually go outside and today and, all this current time on our planet, there are lots of opportunities for feeling stressed and anxious. And the minute I do that, which has happened to me recently, I literally can feel myself, everything just, when I resist and I go, no, I'm not comfortable, or I don't like this, or what's happening, I resist, I stop breathing, I just seize up, and you can forget doing anything that day or having any creative flow. So that's a practice. I know then it's saying come back inside, feel, release, and sort of just keep moving, keep the movement going. So that's an important thing, I think, for life. And life is creativity, so it's very interconnected. Another area I would talk about is safety. And that whole thing of idea of being safe to express yourself. I would never have felt that. And there's an interesting concept, sort of, she talks about, Julia Cameron, in the book, about, I think it's the shadow artist, where you can surround yourself with people who are artistic or creative, and you sort of, you nearly you see them in the limelight or shining creatively, not in an egotistical way now, but just they're expressing themselves and they're very creative. And it's like she said, you find your tribe, but you're not yet ready to sort of step into your own creativity and take center stage in your own life. So I can really relate to that. When I was younger, I always was very, I wouldn't say enamored, but, really interested in people who were very creative and artistic. I just felt drawn to them. But I never saw myself as having any, I just really didn't understand then. So that's quite interesting. And I wouldn't have felt safe. So I think self-care, it's become a big thing for me now, being very safe around the work I do. Do I show it to certain people or not? Do I sort of stay with it until I feel, it's really developed, rather than too early and maybe somebody saying something, even though it isn't really about anyone else's view or opinion of it. But, what are the things I need to do to feel safe? And good, healthy boundaries would be one part of that. So a big thing, I think, is to see, and I do, is that your inner artist or is a child, and a child needs to be nurtured and looked after. And if someone had said something, I don't know if someone did, but I'm sure it happens a lot, and probably not intentionally. Parents, teachers, maybe say, oh, that's awful, or, oh my God, that's rubbish. And then you won't go back to it again, whatever it was, whether it's art or writing, it could be anything. Because we're just creating all the time. So safety is a big thing. And I think that's I'm very, I have a nice space where I work, and I sort of, give myself the time, and it's just, I do nice things. I might light a candle, little rituals. So just developing that safety, that feeling of safety, that you feel safe to express. Community is another huge part to me of getting in touch with my creativity. I mentioned the Artist Way group, and what was really interesting about that is everybody in that group just wanted the best for each other. Everybody just wanted to see each other express themselves completely and authentically. And I'd never experienced that in my life, not in any work environment. I mean, it just blew me away. And it showed me, and also that outside of even that particular group, that got me started, is to be aware of that in my life. It's said that when you often draw in a lot of like crazy makers, I think it's called in the Artist Way book, or a lot of people with drama and lots of problems, or narcissists, I know that word is used a lot now, but I think we all know, and it's a way nearly of self-sabotaging, because I've experienced it in my own life, and this, I take responsibility for that. I wasn't aware of what I was doing, but basically then they're sort of siphoning a lot of your energy off, and there's no space for you to get in touch with that aspect of yourself. And that sort of ties in with another tip, which is around having downtime, which I would have felt very guilty about. I worked, do. And a really important aspect of allowing that creativity flow is having downtime. And I read something which I thought was really nice. It sort of takes the pressure off that it's not about doing, it's about getting. So it's about listening. And I love that. That's what I try to allow more in my life. So whether it's daydreaming, going for a walk, but it's really about listening, because what we're doing in terms of creative expression is, to me, we're just tapping into or aligning with that infinite quantum field of possibilities. And when you align with that, the sky's the limit. It's amazing. And that's another. So that downtime and listening is really important. And the Artist's Way book, I'm going back to it, giving it a big plug, but it really has helped me. There's 2 practices in that about the morning pages and journaling, which I still do, and also the artist state, which I think now is just a part of my life, which is basically taking time for yourself, whether it's to go for a walk or whatever you can do, and allow that sort of, not for any particular purpose, and just allowing maybe whatever inspiration to drop in. Another tip that helps me, I'll mention now before I finish up, is the taking the pressure off having to produce, a certain type of work. I generally sense or feel when I sit down to do anything now, when it's going well, I'm just a channel. I'm just tapping into something. It's not me, Celine, the person. And that sort of lets me off the hook a little bit, because it generally is whatever just flows. I can feel it when it flows, and I can feel it when it's forced, and I've gone into a very mental thing. I didn't really understand that different. It's very different to the way maybe I would have worked. I was in an environment where it was all about the academics and intellect, and it's the total opposite. And that can put a lot of pressure on around it being, perfectionism, and as if someone's going to grade it. And that just, I think, is just, the enemy of creativity. So that has really helped me. And a final thing, I just say, I try to look at life now since I had cancer, and it's really the topic of my book, as life is always happening for me, not to me. So when I can start... and it is inbuilt even on the difficult days, because I can see how every single challenge in my life has led me to living a life that is full of creativity, which I never thought was possible. And that's sort of the journey and what I learned, and I documented in my book, Gifts from the Devastation, because it is exactly that, a very devastating experience. A number of them led me to grow and expand in ways I never thought possible. And it was always happening for my highest good, even when I couldn't see it. So if I leave you on any note, it's that, whatever challenge, just, and I've experienced it. This is, and I'm experiencing it every day, and I'm experiencing challenge a lot of days. But always the synchronicities that are always happening to bring you to the next highest version of you all the time, continually. So yeah, thank you for watching. I hope that you found this video helpful. It's a topic I never realized I had such passion and interest in, but it's really saved my life, having, and realizing that we are all these absolutely amazing creative beings who are here to experience, to grow, and to create. And we have that power and capacity within us. So thank you for watching. And if you liked the video, please like and subscribe to my channel. Also, as I just mentioned, my book there is available to pre-order in the description box below. There's a link. And also my free guide, 6 Signs You're Getting a Spiritual Wake-Up Call, is also available.